supporter and has been a wonderful contributor to the Eucharistic Convention. He is an extraordinary priest. He's an author, but as part of his outstanding priestly life, he spent 25 years as a Marist missioner in Japan and became somewhat expert in the matters of that almost inscrutable society. And he is noted as a reconciler, bringing people together. And as in his notes, he mentioned his older brother, Tony, also a Marist priest, worked tirelessly for reconciliation between Australians and the Japanese, creating sister cities and bringing people together. And this weekend, in addition to talking about reconciliation and faith, Father Paul will share his insights on the canonization of Blessed John Paul II and Blessed John the 23rd, about whom that painting was made. They will be canonized in Rome tomorrow. So it's a great pleasure to introduce an old friend and a sincere supporter of the Eucharistic Convention, Father Paul Glynn of the Society of Mary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wasn't that a beautiful Mass we had? The Lord loves our laughter. He wants us to be joyful people. And certainly that Mass was a Mass that was full of love and full of joy. I've been hearing confessions. It's very impressive to hear people just opening up their heart completely to the Lord. They just want to be good people. And over this weekend now, the Divine Mercy Weekend, there'll be special graces for every one of us. So let's ask the Lord, let's talk to Him. I've told some of the people coming to confession to me, now go out and tell the Lord what you just told me and listen to what He advises you, because He certainly does advise us if we ask Him. A friend of mine worked in a parish where Bob Hope used to go to church. You'd all remember Bob Hope. He became his wife went regularly to Mass for years. Bob would often go with her, and finally, I think it was 10 years before he died, he asked to be received into the church. But he said, don't tell the newspapers. He didn't want a big note himself. And he actually lived well into his 99th year. And on one occasion, because the person speaking thought he was deaf, said, who would want to live to be 100? And he said, someone who's 99. He said, when I was a young entertainer, I would have starved to death, except for all the vegetables and fruit they threw at me on the stage. And I think it was Bob, wasn't it, who told that story about the old-timer. He was 110 years old, and the local journalist came to interview him, and the old-timer said, had I known I was going to live so long, I would have taken better care of my health. Well, Bob found the faith through the good example of his wife, and he gave us a lot of laughter. I'm going to talk to you today, first about a problem I had. In Australia, when Vatican II was going on, the Archbishop of Hobart, Gilly Young, put on a big liturgy conference. And they prepared for about 6 months, and they sent out questionnaires asking the people what helped them in the liturgy and what didn't help them. And quite a number of people said, sometimes we like to hear the priest talk about his problems and how he handled them. This is very much in touch with Vatican II. Until Vatican II, we used the word sermon. After Vatican II, we began to use the word homily. Like a sermon is like a school teacher up on high, yous down there, yous better do this. whereas a homily comes from the Latin words homos ille. Homos is the same, and ille is the group. And so a priest is one of the group, gets up and prays for some time and thinks, and then tries to share something that might be helpful to you. Well, we have a lot of atheists around today. Now, when I went to novitiate, it was up in a mountain area in New South Wales, and it was a beautiful, simple year. It was straight after the war. 4 of the novices out of 16 had been soldiers or airmen, or one was in the Navy. And there was a great sense of optimism in Australia. The war was over. Most of us had brothers in, we were worried about they might have been killed, and they'd all come back safely. And it was just a full-time, simple year with the Lord. A lot of prayer, a lot of silence, no newspapers, no radio. I think some of the ex-soldiers found it hard not to be able to smoke, but they put up with that. And then after the 1 year of novitiate, I went down to study philosophy. And we were told to think. And I started to think, and my thinking was getting me into some trouble. I began to have doubts about the faith. How do we know that the gospel stories are true? They happened 2,000 years ago. They're beautiful stories, but so is the Cinderella story beautiful, to cheer up children. And then my doubts about the faith came, about the church, and finally about God. See, after the war, there were a lot of articles about Auschwitz and Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I began to have this problem. If God is all loving and all powerful, why does he allow this? Those innocent people being wiped out. So I ran into a very painful time in my life. I wanted to be a priest. My family was Catholic. We knew the Jesus story. It was very beautiful. It gives an answer to death, even an answer to suffering. But is it true? And this thought came to me. If I become a priest in 7 years' time, and I'm in a parish, and a young mother is killed in a road accident. She's left children behind, and she's left a grieving husband. And I say to him, but your wife was a good person, she's in heaven. And he says to me, Father, do you really believe that? Are you sure of that? Are you absolutely sure there is a heaven? That was the thought that came. And unless I could answer that question clearly,